Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our fourth day, right, of classes in the Summer School of Brazilian Studies. Welcome you all. We're glad to have you back again. And today, we're getting ready for another delightful lecture from Professor Tiago Novo on Brazilian geography. I'm pretty sure you will enjoy it as much as you have enjoyed the previous ones. So we've been having a series of such great lectures with such great professors. And we are very honored, Professor Tiago, to have you back. Tiago has been with us for a couple of years, and he always delights us with his words and his brilliant presentation. So I hope you will enjoy it. And then again, we'll welcome questions in the chat box. And then after his speech, we'll share some of it with him so he can help us out. And then I'll pass the floor then to Professor Tiago. Thank you very much. Such an honor to have you here with us again.
Okay. Can I start? Okay, I will just share a screen. And just give me a heads up if it's okay, it's already appearing. Okay.
Yes?
Yeah?
Yes, you can hear.
Excellent. Okay, so hello everyone. Well, good morning if you are here in America, or good afternoon, Africa, Europe, Central Asia. Good night if you are in Western Asia or Australia. My name is Tiago Novo. I am a geologist, researcher, and professor from the Geoscience Institute here in UFMG. And it's a pleasure to talk to you about Brazilian geography today. I would like to thank the summer school staff too, Catherine, Luciana, Ricardo, Marcos, Jessica, and so on. Thank you very much for the invitation. I like very much this kind of event. So let's start with Brazilian geography. And first of all, let's understand what we're going to see here today. Okay, what is geography? Because roughly speaking, we can divide geography into human and physical geography. In one hand, we have this so-called human geography that is directly related to human actions with space. So it embraces society, culture, race, politics, but you're gonna have complete explanations. You already have some of these explanations with Eloisa, Corinne, Bruno, and so on. I'm gonna talk just a little bit about the human geography because here we're gonna focus on physical geography. The physical geography, we're gonna see how Earth dynamics shape Brazilian relief, topography, vegetation, hydrography, climate, and well, of course, I am a geologist. I am from the geology department. We're gonna see geology too. Okay, this is an index of this presentation. I'm gonna start with a brief introduction and then talk a little bit about demography, Brazilian GDP and health. And then we're gonna start to understand Earth dynamics. You know, then we're gonna start to shape Brazil relief, shape the Brazilian territory. Then I'm gonna finish this presentation going from north to south. Then I'm gonna talk a little bit about each region from here, from this wonderful country, from Brazil. And well, this presentation is gonna be available on YouTube later. And if you want to understand, like, I don't know, just from north to south or just shaping Brazil, you can already forward the presentation. I put this little icon here, so it makes things easy. So let's understand. I put a lot of wonderful pictures here from Brazil. Let's understand how we form these amazing beaches, more than 7,000 kilometers of coastline. This one is paradise on earth. You know, this one called Fernando de Noronha, it's already won prizes for the best beach of the world. And let's understand which forces make these beaches, which forces shape this relief, this wonderful relief, creating these outstanding waterfalls. This one called Tabuleiro is pretty close to Belo Horizonte here in UFMG. It's like a 2 hours drive, 2 or 3 hours drive. This one in the south. And about the rivers, well, let's see how big they actually are and how they got those different formats and sizes. About the mountains, Brazil have beautiful mountains. Let's understand how earth dynamics shape this amazing landscape. The Brazilian nature is amazing and is so diversified. Let's understand, beginning with the basic. Let's start. Brazil is in South America. It's the biggest country of South America. And actually, Brazil is so big, most of people have no idea how big Brazil actually is, as you can see here. Of course, here, jokes apart, of course, you can't fit these things here in Brazil, but jokes apart, Brazil is pretty big, is one of the 6 countries with more than 5 million square kilometers in area. We have here the US, Canada, Russia is pretty big, China and Australia. When you get the big 5, you have Russia with 17 million square kilometer, Canada, China and US almost 10, and Brazil 8.5 million square kilometer. It's very, very big. And actually Brazil, if you take off Alaska here, Brazil is actually bigger than this part of the US. Okay, this is a little dark picture, but is just to have a general idea of one thing that I'm gonna talk in a little bit. Here you can see South America during the night. You can see that Brazilian coast have most of the cities, and then it comes countryside here. This is very interesting because what guided this urbanization here was mailing the gold during colonial times. I'm going to talk about this later. Of course, nowadays it's pretty huge, but it starts in the colonial times. But what I want to highlight here is the size of Brazil, these dimensions. This is actually in a scale picture. It is a continent, it is a country with continental dimensions. Here you can fit the whole Europe. You know, here is Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, and so on. Just to make a general idea, France is the same size of Minas Gerais. Minas Gerais is the state, is the province from Belo Horizonte. UFMG is actually Federal University from Minas Gerais. We are here, so just our province, just our state is the size of France. So it's a pretty big country. About demography, I'm gonna talk just a little bit because you're gonna have the lecture in July 13 with Corinne Davis about Brazilian society. But, well, just to highlight some points, Brazilian population is more, let me take this here. Brazilian population is about 200 million people, distributed in a very heterogeneous way across these 8.5 million square kilometers. If you check in the north, you have like 4 inhabitants per square kilometer. When you go to the southeast, it's 86 inhabitants per square kilometer. It's like 21 and a half times more. And you have the northeast and the south like 35, 40, and the center west is actually too not very population. Here we have a lot of cattle and soybean plantations. And when you go to big cities like Belo Horizonte is where UFMG is, it's 7,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. So you can see the It's a big country, but almost no one lives here. About Brazilian race, well, you already see about culture and history with Eloise and Rafael. You're gonna see about Brazilian race with Cristiano in July 14 or 15, I don't know. I'm not sure. And this is a very nice painting. This is Operários from Tarsila do Amaral. Is just to show how diverse Brazil is. When you go here, we have the race distribution across the country. You have a lot of more brown and black people here in the north and northeast, and here in the south, a little more of white people. Here is the state, here is Minas Gerais, this one, this big one here. We have like the two words here where Brazil meet each other, the two Brazils meet each other. Well, here I just put a chart. This chart is just to show how our politicians do not represent the people. They are mainly white men, 75%. So you're gonna see more about this in Brazil politics with Bruno. But just to highlight, geography is pretty nice. It's intertwined a lot of subjects. Okay, this is just the distribution that I just talked. White people mostly in the south, and brown in the north, and black people most in the northeast. This state here, this called Bahia, is right in the north of Minas Gerais. Coming to Brazil, please go visit this place. It's wonderful, amazing beach. The people is amazing. So, moving on, I'm gonna talk just a little bit. You see that I'm talking very fast about the first topics because I wanna focus on shaping Brazil and talking from north to south. About Brazilian GDP and health, I put this chart. This chart is from yesterday. This is a chart of the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. And now Brazil is an epicenter. Brazil and India are the two epicenter of the pandemic. This is data from the World Health Organization from the last 2 weeks. Okay, sorry, this is in Portuguese. This is the number of cases in the last 2 weeks, 14 days. And I put here, we have a great report from Marcia Castro. She's a researcher from Harvard University. And her job, she shows 5 reasons why Brazil is the epicenter of the pandemic. And it's pretty nice because it embraces geography. So the first reason why Brazil is the epicenter nowadays is because social inequality. We have a lot of social inequality here. I think you already know about this. The second fact is Brazil have a dense urban network. So the cities are connected. It makes the virus, spread countryside. And here's an interesting fact, because the virus start like in Belo Horizonte, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, and then go spreading by this dense urban network, and this go to across the roads, it goes countryside. But it go countryside by the roads here in the south, in the southeast, in the northeast. Here in the north, the virus is spread through the Amazon River, because here we don't have many roads. So they just check the cases and go see, okay, Manaus is the capital of Amazon, and then they just see the virus is spread across the Amazon River. So here it goes by the roads, countryside, and here by the river. Back into the 5 reasons why: social inequality, dancing urban network, and then we have the 3 other factors. The first one, the third one, is that we have no federal, state, and municipal political alignment. So we have no federal plan to contain the virus. This is directly linked to the 4th one, because as we don't have any federal action, we have uncoordinated opening and close of the cities. So It just doesn't work. And finally, the fifth reason is that we have the past circulation of the virus. So it already circulated here before we start the first notifications, maybe during the carnival last year. I don't know. So the good news is the OFMG is developing a vaccine. We are already vaccinating with Pfizer and so on, but it's taking too long. We have an excellent health system. Again, lack of federal action, unfortunately, is taking too long. Hope this year things start to go back to normal. About Brazilian GDP, I want to highlight something. Well, you're going to see economy with Patricia tomorrow, but what we have here, I'm going to talk very brief, is São Paulo, Rio, Belo, and mainly Curitiba are the economic business centers from Brazil. And what we have here, in Rio, we have a lot of oil. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. Here in the north and central west, we have a lot of cattle and soybeans. Brazil is one of the biggest soybeans producer and cattle. And now these two, iron and gold. All these things controls a lot of Brazilian GDP. And well, iron and gold, we have a lot here in Minas Gerais and in this part of Brazil called Pará. And it's very nice, because the gold, as I talked before, it was the first time that mineral resources controlled Brazilian occupation. When Brazil was a colony from Portugal, the colonization starts in the coast, and then it goes spreading, searching for the gold. It's very nice. And here, Minas Gerais is the place that found most of the gold. So I'm going to talk about this in north to south in Brazil. It's very nice. And well, about Brazilian history, 2 days ago with Rafael, I think he maybe covered part of this kind of occupation. So now let's start about the physical geography and the geology. This is here number 4, shaping Brazil. Let's understand what shaped Brazil landscape, which forces are responsible for this. First of all, let's understand what is the landscape. What is a landscape? There is a definition that I like a lot. That is, when we look at a landscape, we see not only the present moment expressed, but accumulation of different times, not only geological time, but also historical time, the social construction that humanity has made, reflecting its interests, which are accumulating in the landscape, revealing the diverse times and process. So what this means, we are not just looking for anthropic modifications. We are not just looking for the cities here. We are going to check the relief. We're going to check the mountains. Everything could merge. Okay. Of course, there are some places like these huge developed centers. Here is São Paulo, where the anthropic modifications are pretty huge. But there are other places like Ouro Preto. You can highlight the mountains, and the anthropic modifications kind of merge with the mountains in the back. This is a pretty place. This is a 1-hour drive from UFMG, and this is one of the cities that was constructed during the gold exploration in colonial times. And of course, Rio, wonderful nature, and you have the city here. So these things compose the landscapes, this landscape. And I'm gonna talk more here about how we create this amazing nature, these amazing mountains and so on. Another thing, when we're gonna start to understand what really shaped Brazil relief, what forces are responsible for the landscape, we have to understand the geological time scale. We need to understand, this is gonna take just 1 minute. We have biological time. The biological time is the time of a life, 100 years, maybe a little less, a little more. We have historical time, centuries, maybe millennia, something like this. Now we're going to talk about geological time. To understand how we build the landscape, we have to understand geological time scale. It's millions and millions and millions and sometimes billions of years. Just to have an idea, this is the cosmic calendar idealized by Carl Sagan, the famous astrophysic, and he put the history of the universe in the scale of 1 year. So here is the Big Bang, January 1st, and December 31 is today. And in this calendar, each month is about 1.2 billion years. So the universe, as we know until today, is around 13 billion years old. Around September, we have Earth, 4.5 billion years old, and our solar system. And in this calendar, one day is around 38 million years. 1 second is more than 400 years. So if you think in this calendar, the time of a life is less than the blink of an eye. It's like 0.3 seconds. Just to understand the geological time, what we are talking here, we're going to see from September to December now. All the history that is written, everyone you know, everything you ever heard about humanity happened in this last 15 seconds of the year. Just to have this idea, the last millennium is in the last 15 seconds. All the history from humankind. I'm not talking about the first humans. I am talking about all the history that our society developed. So having this in mind, let's understand what really shaped Brazilian relief. Let's understand the forces. This is an animation. This is from Scotese YouTube channel. And what we have here is a chronometer here. It's going to the past, 30 millions in the past, 40 millions in the past. And it shows how Earth looks like in the past. Because what you have to understand here is that the Earth, as we know today, the present day Earth, is the result of several geological events over this near 4.5 billion years of existence. Particularly here in Brazil, we have two major tectonic events. They are very important for this current configuration. The first one happens about 400 to 500 million years ago, where several continental nuclei collided with each other, closing small oceans and generating big mountain ranges. This event gave rise to what we call the Pangaea supercontinent. You must know about this. You must heard about Pangaea supercontinent. And this big and large landmass that was Pangaea, it stuck together until around 150 million years ago. This is when the Atlantic opening, and this opening was the second greatest event. So we have the first event, that is the agglutination, and the second event, that is the breakup. If you check here in this animation, we are here about 340 million years ago in the past. And here is Brazil, here is South America. So when we go, this is the result of the first event, the agglutination, the first event. I want you to keep this in mind because we're going to see how this event shaped the Brazilian mountains. And then when we go now to the future, we are in the past, when we came to the present time, around, well, here you can see South America, North America, Africa here. This is Antarctica, India, and Australia. When you go around 150 million years ago, you start the opening of the South Atlantic. The North Atlantic already exists, and then start the opening of South Atlantic. This is important because at this time, we start to make Brazilian oil that is pretty good for our GDP. Sorry. Oops. And then, okay, we are around here. When we go to the present day, you see the Atlantic opening, and you can see this dance of the tectonic plates, you know, and nowadays this is the modern world configuration. So we have these two events. The first one is the agglutination, and the second one is the South Atlantic opening. These are the forces that shape Brazilian territory. I'm going to show here a brief presentation. Here is Brazil, and this blue thing here is right here, this is Minas Gerais. Belo Horizonte is around here, it's around here. So what happened in Brazil around 500 million years ago was something like this. There are collisions everywhere with continental nucleus, and this shaped a big part of Brazil. And this kind of collisions, it actually built a lot of big mountains. You know, Brazil looks like the nowadays Himalayan, as you can see in this animation. This is how a Himalaya form, and it's expected that around 400 million years ago, Brazil looked a lot like these things, a lot of mountains. Of course, they are eroded now. We don't have anything like Himalaya. The biggest mountain from Brazil nowadays is like 3,000 meters. So far, far away, but it's 400 million years of erosion. At this time, the world looked like this. We have South America with Brazil here. Belo is around here, FMG is around here, and we have these lines. These lines is the mountain range, and you see the alignment of these mountains nowadays here in Brazil. Okay, this is how the South Hemisphere looks like. You have South America, Africa, India is still here, Antarctica and Australia, and you can see the mountains, the alignment of the mountains here in Brazil. It shaped the mountains. This is the Bandera Peak. It's a very nice place, and well, it's between BH and a state called Espírito Santo and Rio de Janeiro. It's like 5 hours drive from FMG, and you can see the mountains, the alignment of the mountains. So this is one event that shaped the Brazilian mountains. Sorry, let's understand the second event. The second event is the Gondwana or the Pangaea breakup. This happens when Africa goes one way, South America goes the other way. And what happens here when it starts breaking, when it starts spreading apart, we have a lot of organic matter here. This organic matter, it becomes oil, like some million years later. And during this time, this is excellent because during this time that we shape this 7,000 kilometers of Brazilian coastline. During this time, we shape this amazing beach. The Northeast is the ideal to go, you know, because it's always warm, hot water, excellent. So we not only shape the coastline, as we start spreading Brazilian territory, we also shape the lowlands. So all this part in gray here, we start to shape these plains and lowlands during this opening. You know, we start to focus the rivers in Brazil, like the Amazon River that is going now to the Atlantic Ocean. And of course, we shape a lot of large canyons too during this time. All the rivers we have here in Brazil, all kinds of shape, they are guided by this tectonic force, this spreading tectonic force. And there are a lot of big and large rivers. And well, we shape not only the rivers, as we spread, we have some dry things, dry regions in the countryside, and we have the Brazilian desert. Of course, it's not a big desert. We are in a tropical country. I'm going to talk about climate in a little bit, but you can Google, this is Jalapão. This is Central West Brazil. Nice place, a small desert. You can see here what we call Cerrado, is like a savanna, pretty close to the desert. And also during this opening, we formed these large and amazing canyons. This is in the south of Brazil. Beautiful place to go to. Okay, so those are the tectonics effort that shape Brazil. This is a country with continental dimensions, and we encompass here all kinds of relief. So here, when the second event, the opening, we form most of these plain reliefs, you know, these large plains, they got stable here. This picture is from here. This is what we call pampas, is like a grassland. And this one here is in the northeast of Brazil. This is what we call the Boriema Plateau. And of course, we shape the mountains too, mainly during the first event, the agglutination event. And then when they start spreading, the mountain start to drift apart of each other. So we have these large mountains, and then we go to a plateau. Then we have again these large mountains. They got separated. They got a little bit far from each other, but you can still see these large mountains, then a plateau, then large mountains again, another plateau. This is the interaction of these two main geologic events that shaped Brazilian relief. So, another things about the Brazilian relief in tectonics, when you talk about the tectonic plates, Brazil is in the middle of the South American plate. Here is highlighting the South American plate. Brazil is around here and is in the center of the South American plate. It's a very stable place to be, you know, because when you are talking about volcanism and earthquakes, these things happen mainly in the border of the tectonic plates. So if you go to Andes, the Andes is all across here, all across this western boundary. And here there are a lot of earthquakes and volcanism. But here in Brazil, we are pretty calm. We don't have almost no volcano. I'm going to show the most recent volcanism we have here is 250,000 years ago. So here is very stable, very peaceful. Of course, when you check there are some small earthquakes. Here are all the earthquakes that we measure, I think, in the last 10 years. And well, they are not huge. They are pretty small earthquakes. There are more earthquakes here in the south, actually, because we measure more in the south. We don't know if there are more earthquakes happening here in the north because we don't have the equipment to measure it. And what happened in the Brazilian earthquakes, you know, you can broke some roofs or roof tiles. It's not a big deal. This is the most damage ever caused by an earthquake here. So you can ask, well, if you are in the middle of a tectonic plate, how the earthquake happens? Well, actually, the rocks here have a lot of structures. This is normal worldwide, they have it. And when these structures, these plane structures, these planar structures, start the accommodation, there are some slides. During these slides between the rocks, there are some friction, And this is what generates the Brazilian earthquakes. They are not huge, they are small earthquakes, but they happen once in a while. About the volcanism, here are the two islands that are the farthest points from Brazil. So here is São Peter, São Paulo archipelago, and here are Trindade, Martin Vaz, and Columbia archipelago. So here is this both islands. You can go there for tourism. Unfortunately, we only have scientific and military bases in these places. And Trindade, this here, is Brazil's youngest rocks, and they are 250,000 years. Okay, most of Brazilian rocks are millions and millions and millions years old. These are the youngest ones. And well, they call Trindade like the unreachable paradise, is more than 1,000 kilometers from the coast. Here is Brazil. We have São Paulo, Rio, Vitória. Belo is around here in the map, Belo Horizonte. And well, the island is wonderful. And there are some researchers from UFMG that work there, you know, go there, stay like 1 month, 3 months, or 1 week, depends according the army, and can go there. It's a very nice place, very beautiful place, but unfortunately not available for tourism. Okay, now let's start to see Brazil from north to south. You can divide Brazil in 5 big regions. This is the geographical political division from Brazil. You have the north. The north is big, is very big. It's almost half of Brazil, you know, because it don't look like in the map because there is this distortion in the map, but it's pretty huge. So this is the north, the green one, the central west, the yellow one, the northeast, here in blue. We have southeast in red. This is Minas Gerais. Belo is around here. UFMG is around here in the pointer. And here, the orange one is the south. I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these. First, just general idea about the climate and vegetation. You all heard about the Amazon tropical rainforest. Okay, this is huge. It's not only in Brazil, it embraces a big part of South America. It's like 25% of South America. And about the climate here, we have this equatorial weather, but most of Brazil is in a tropical weather, the big part of Brazil. Of course, there are some differences. Here is dry and hot. Here is wet and hot in the coast. And what we have here in the central is like moderate, you know, it's a tropical weather, but it's going to a temperate climate. And here we have the temperate climate. You know, here, actually here in this part of Brazil, it was snowing like last week. And we can deal with cold, okay? I am from a tropical country. I'm freezing here, and it's like 10 degrees. So about vegetation, we have this big tropical rainforest. Here in the coastline, we have this tropical forest. This is not as big as this. The vegetation is much smaller, shorter than here in the coast when you compare to the Amazon rainforest. We have what we call Caatinga. Caatinga is it's dry, it's hot, it's not very good, this part. But when we go to this part here, that you get northeast, southeast, and central west from Brazil, it's what we call cerrado or savanna, like a savanna. It's a pretty good vegetation, you know, it's very nice place to go. And of course, here we have the grassland, what we call the Pampas. Okay, so let's see Brazil from north to south. The north is this green one here in the top. It's the big one. It's almost 4 million square kilometers. It's almost half of Brazil. I'm sorry. Almost half of Brazil, 45%. Here, we have the tropical rainforest, the Amazonian forest with this equatorial climate, is the Amazonian lowland, big plain. Of course, when you go right to the top, here in the top, the boundary with the Guianas, you have this Guianas Plateau that is actually the highest point of Brazil, but otherwise the rest is a big lowland. And what is interesting is that it's very hot, very wet. It's always raining, always raining. You almost never can see the Amazon River from space because there are a lot of clouds. And here is where we have the biggest river of the world. This is the Amazon River. It's pretty huge. When you see the Amazon River and the hydrographic system of the Amazon, it's amazing, Actually, the Amazon River, this is South America. They cover, I'm sorry, I was wrong before, it's not 25, it's almost 40% of South America. When you go, it's not just Brazil, you got a lot of countries here, almost 40% of South America. It has around 400 billion trees. And this creates 1/50 of Earth oxygen. Every day, the river recycles 20% of this water. It's discharged in the Atlantic. Every day, 20%. This is a huge amount of mass that is going from the river to the Atlantic Ocean. And during the dry season, you have less water. During the wet season, you have more water during the rainy season. And it distorts the gravitational field. It's a lot of mass. It can change during the dry and wet seasons. Here, it gets more dense during the rainy seasons due to the amount of water. It's pretty nice. And, well, as I told, something interesting is when you're looking from space, you almost never have a clear view of the Amazon River. It always have a lot of clouds, as you can see in this animation. This is a YouTube video from PBS. And okay, this happens for one reason. We have around 400 billion trees here in the Amazon. And these trees release a lot of water in the air during the photosynthesis, And the Amazon trees are huge. They are the biggest trees from Brazil. One single tree can release around 1,000 liters of water in one day. When we get they all together, the Amazon forest release around 20 trillion liters each day. 20 trillion liters of water to the atmosphere each day. So this is actually the biggest river of the world. This is the Amazon floating river. It's wonderful thing, and it keeps everything very wet. It's very nice, very, very nice. There is a series it calls One Strange Rock. It's very nice. They talk about this Amazon floating river. If you have the chance, please watch it. Well, unfortunately, there are a lot of devastation for cattle and agribusiness here. And well, we try to stop. Sometimes the government helps, sometimes don't. About the geology, in the north, there is one of the biggest and richest metallogenetic province of the world. It calls Carajás. This is the guy that discovered it. This guy name is Breno dos Santos. He took a picture 50 years later in the same spot that where he discovered it. He discovered in the late 60s, most for iron. But then the researcher starts to find another metals. You know, nowadays you have copper, manganese, a lot of metals there in this metallogenetic province. Brazil GDP depends a lot of this. And interesting fact, during the 80s, it begins a gold fever. And this is one picture, what we call Serra Pelada. The translation, the literal translation is naked mountain. Well, this is a Newman anthill. Lots of people go there aim for instant richness. You know, this is like the El Dorado. You can find a lot of gold there. And when you see a picture like this, you can't imagine this in, you know, you can imagine this happen nowadays. But this is a picture from the 80s. You know, it happens like 40 years ago. It's not that long ago that this kind of thing happened in Brazil. Nowadays, it's regularized. It still produces a lot of gold. This is just symbolic image. Just I'm showing symbolic images. This is not actually from the naked mountain, but nowadays it's regularized. But just for you to know this interesting fact about the gold exploration in the north part of Brazil. So going down a little bit, we have this yellow one. This yellow one is Central West Brazil. Here, this square is Brasilia. Brasilia is the capital of Brazil. Here is a part of Brasilia. It is from early 60s, you know, April 21. Very nice. Here we have the Pantanal lowland, amazing place. And unfortunately, in the last 2 years, it happens a lot of devastation, mainly for cattle and agribusiness too. Well, we are trying to contain, but last year it was catastrophic. And here in the Central West, we have the largest soy plantations, the soybean plantations from Brazil. Brazil is actually the second largest producer of soybeans, only behind the US. And well, just to have an idea, only for soil here in Brazil, when we get all these areas together, it is 340,000 square kilometers, okay? To have a more clear idea, only for soil, we have here an area the size of Germany, okay? Just for soil, just for one plantation here, this kind of site. This is not good for the terrain, but unfortunately it happens. Okay, not very much about the Central West, but the Northeast, here is the beginning of the colonization, the European colonization. And it's an amazing place. I love the Northeast from Brazil. Here we have these three kinds of vegetation. We have the tropical forest here in the coastline. We have the Caatinga. The Caatinga is the Boriema lowland. It's very dry and very hot. And then we have the Cerrado. This place here is amazing. Is amazing. The Cerrado place here is where we have the Chapada Diamantina. Amazing, amazing, amazing place. So, but here in the Caatinga, in the Boriema lowland, here is when you have like mudstone and it gets dry and it cracks like this. So it's a very dry region. This picture is right in the middle of this Caatinga. And well, very dry and hot, and unfortunately, there are a lot of poverty here. So there is a big migration flux from the Caatinga to the big cities like São Paulo, mainly São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. Okay. And when you go to the coast, everything changes because you have hot water, you have the forest, you have the ideal weather, and you have the best beach from Brazil. They are all in the Northeast. Okay, it's very, very nice, a paradise on earth, amazing places to be, amazing places to eat. Everything is so beautiful. And about geology, we have these gemstones, ornamental rocks. It's very nice. They call Paraiba Tourmaline. Paraiba is a place around here, if I'm not wrong. And well, this is one of the most expensive gemstones of the world. It's actually very beautiful. A little bit south, we get here in the southeast, this red one. The southeast, we have Minas Gerais, we have São Paulo here, then Rio de Janeiro, then Espírito Santo. Okay, so this is a place, this is a picture from Rio. I think you can recognize it. And this is the most developed one, like 55%, 55% of Brazilian GDP came from here. And almost half of Brazilian population is here too. Because in the big cities, São Paulo, Belo, and Rio mainly, a lot of people living. And we have two kinds of coast. We have this littoral lowland, and we have what we call this elevate passive margin. There are some mountains, escarpment pretty close to the ocean, and these littoral lowlands, good beach, not as good as the Northeast, but very nice places. And we go a little bit countryside, we have this amazing scenario. This is very beautiful. I think the most beautiful mountains from Brazil is here in the Southeast. This is the what we call Serra do Mar, or Mar Mountain Range. You go a little bit countryside, you go to Serra da Mantiqueira. This is Bandera Peak. This is what we call Caparaó. This is where happens, we have mountains, then a little plateau, then mountains again. So we have Serra do Mar, a little plateau, mountains again. This is not snow, okay? This is just water freezing because it's pretty cold. It's like more than almost 3,000 meters high, the Bandera Peak. Very nice place. And here in the southeast, we have this amazing place. This is Belo Horizonte. I love this town. Here is the Pampulha Lake. This church is very famous too. This is the Mineral Stadium where the 7-1 game, Brazil and Germany, happens. And this tree is right here. This is UFMG. Wonderful place, wonderful place. So here in the south of Belo Horizonte, this is a picture that we took from north to south. Here in the south, we have this mountain. This is what we call the Serra do Kuhal, or the Kuhal mountain range. And it goes to the south. When it goes to the south, it has this big alignment. And this is called the Moeda, Serra da Moeda, Moeda mountain range. And this is mainly iron ore, okay? Oh, you can parachute from here. Nice thing to do when you come here. This is mainly iron ore. And here in the base, in the bottom of the Moeda, we have a lot of gold deposits. And these gold deposits, they are related. Remember, the first time that a mineral resource guided Brazilian occupation, this kind of ore, it was already from colonial times. You know, there is a lot of gold here in Minas Gerais. They call that Minas Gerais has a heart of gold and a chest of iron, because you always have the deposits like related. Here is iron. Here we found gold. Of course, this is not all gold, of course, but there are some places with gold here. And if you go, you know, trekking here, you can still see the places during colonial times that extract gold. You know, you can go like you can take a bus to the south of Belo and go walking, and you can see some rocks with iron, and then you just climb down, just go down, sorry, and you can see like these holes where they used to get the gold during colonial times. Nowadays, we still searching for gold. Now it's only subterraneous mines, and there are a lot of iron too. This is Belo. This is an iron mine, as you can see there. And well, there is a thing, this is very important for Brazilian economy, but there are some catastrophic things that happens. The tailings dam rupture that happens 2 times in the last 7 years. This is catastrophic. This is very shocking. In this one was 2 years ago. More than 200 people died. And this could be avoided. This was a crime against humanity. This was a crime against the environment. It polluted the river, kill the fish, kill a lot of workers that were here. And it happens 2 times in the last 7 years. The first time it was 2015 in Mariana. And when it collapsed, it was a war scenario. It destroyed a village. Fortunately, the people was removed before. And well, this is the destruction. This is Mariana. Belo is around here in the pointer outside the map. And this is the Doce River. This is the Doce River. And you can check the mud. It goes until the Atlantic Ocean, leaving this destruction, killing a lot of fish. A lot of people that depend of this fish get without money. And the second one, 2 years ago, January of 2019, it was when this catastrophic thing happens. And when you go there, it's still like a war scenario until today. This is very shocking. And I show this because it could be avoided. These structures, they could be better constructed. And unfortunately, it happens. It's still a war scenario until today. And I don't know. In our minds, it's very strong. Well, moving on about the southeast, we have, like in the northeast, a lot of gemstones here too. It's pretty hard after this scene, but well, this gemstone is called fluorite. This is from Minas Gerais. And this picture I took when I went visit Freiberg in Germany. I do a part of my PhD there. And there is a nice mineralogical museum there. And there is a room just with Brazilian gemstones. And there is this one too, tourmaline from Minas Gerais. And of course, there is these ornamental rocks. Espírito Santo is the place. It's a worldwide pole of ornamental rocks, very beautiful granites. And of course, we have the oil. The oil, you can see here the coast. Most of Brazilian oil is here. It's what we call the slope zone. Here in this light blue, we have what we call the platform. And here is what we call the slope zone, going to this dark blue. Here we have the ocean get much more deeper, and here we have the Brazilian oil. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but we have 2 kinds of oil. Until 20 years ago, we only search for the post-salt. What happens when you start to spread South America and Africa? You start a lot of water, ocean water coming, influx of water, and you can deposit this large amount of salt, you know, because the water is salty and it deposits this salt layer. And we have the pre-salt and the post-salt. When you go here, you can see during the 80s, we only searched for the pre-salt, and it was around 4,000 wheels, oil wheels, and it was 40,000 barrels a day. Now we have these large deposits, extremely big deposits with light oil and low viscosity, very good. And we have like 52 wells, oil wells, so it's less impact, and it produces 500,000 barrels a day, you know, 12 times more for much less wells. It's pretty good. It's good for nature. We still need this for the GDP. We still need this for the economic issues, unfortunately. And well, pretty nice work. Finally, going to the south. The south is the smallest one in area. We got here these three provinces, sorry. It's actually smaller than Minas Gerais in area. This is where we have snow. We have here the temperate climate, you know, and actually, I don't know, we can't have winter here. You know, look at the snowman that we built in Brazil. It's not good. It's not good. And I am already freezing with 10 degrees. I don't know, it's a tropical country, but it's a very nice place to go. About the geology is very nice, the geography, because we have these large sedimentary and volcanic rocks here in the south of Brazil. Here we have these three states of the south, and it's very nice. You remember the map that I showed this animation? It's very nice for that reconstruction, because there is a field that we call comparative geology, that we got paleontology, lithology, tectonics, and climate. And places like these, you can fit very well, you know, the fossils that we found here in the south of Brazil, we can link with the ones that we found in India, in Namibia, in Antarctica, and Australia. It's a very nice to reconstruct and put the pieces of this puzzle together, you know. About the lithology is also very nice. We can fit perfectly with Namibia and south of Brazil. And the weather, because some rocks only form in specific conditions. It's very good places. And we have here this, what we so-called Meridional Plateau. It was formed mainly during the Atlantic opening with these amazing canyons. It's a place you have to visit when you come to Brazil. And this wonderful waterfall that is right in the south of Brazil, pretty close to Argentina. Nice place to go to. And well, this is Brazil. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for the interest. Again, I will be thankful for the summer school for the invitation. And I am available for any questions that you have.
Thank you so much for the enlightening words of your lecture, Professor Tiago. And we have many questions. I don't know if we're going to have time for all of them, but let's get started, right?
Okay, so, can we take like just 2 minutes and I will be right back?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
And meanwhile, okay. I'll talk to you a bit about our next event. So next week, we have 3 important sessions, as you might know, apart from our classes in the morning. So on Tuesday, we're going to have a virtual tour to Inhotim. Inhotim, as you might know, is probably the biggest outdoors museum we have, maybe in the world, because it's such a big place and it's beautiful. And we have many art pieces, modern art pieces, contemporary art pieces from diverse artists, and we have beautiful gardens from species, plant species from all over the world as well. And uh, of course, being there would be a unique experience, even for us. I mean, I've been there many, many times, and still when I go there, I still get like flabbergasted by, the experience. But you have a hint on the beauty of the Inhotim Museum with a virtual tour. And then on Thursday, we'll have a talk by Miguel Nicolelis. He's one of the most important scientists Brazil has, and in the world, he is very important too. And finally, on Friday, we'll have the luau. And it's important that you register in our Google form link, because we're expecting presentations from you, and songs and poetry and artistic presentations. And that's basically our next week's schedule. I hope to see you all there as well. Okay, so Professor, are you ready?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So let's, we'll start from um, a question from Simi Kucharova. She's from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. And the question is, what impact did the fires in the Amazon rainforest last year and this year as well, right? What impact did that might have in the environment? There's been a lot of news and fake news about this topic, and statistics, and you might want to.
Okay. I'm gonna put a map here just to illustrate. This is a very nice question. And
let me just, I'm sorry, I'll just add up Juliana Menezes' question. She's from the University of California, and has to do with it. And she's also curious about the impact on the geography, on how these forest fires have impacted the geography as well.
okay, so there are some studies here in the Amazon. We already destroyed a large part of the Amazon. In the last 2 decades, Brazil started an excellent program for search these fires. Unfortunately, in the last 2 years, a lot of these starts to go down. We have lack of federal improvement. Actually, the federal actions are against these projects to search, to fiscalize this kind of action. And well, the last 2 years they are not good for Brazilian environment. We have a thing, a line here in the scientific method that we are almost reaching a point where the forest will not get, like the reforestation, it can help in a natural way. And we are reaching a point of degradation that it will not happen anymore. If you destroy a part of the Amazon forest nowadays, what happens in a few years, it grow back again. Of course, it's not the same forest. You kill a lot of animals, you can make some animals go extinct. But nowadays, if you just put fire in a place and, some decades later, this place have the forest again, because you will not change the climate there. But we are reaching a point that this will not happen anymore. And what's gonna happen? You know, during this, what we are doing, the devastation that we are doing in Brazil nowadays, this could happen in the next 5 to 6 years. I hope it will not happen. I really hope it will not happen. But if it happens, what we're gonna have is that this line of vegetation, this is our cerrado, it's like a savanna, small trees, it's gonna just go in this direction. When it goes in this direction, the caatinga starts to go in this direction too. So what we could have if we destroy the Amazon forest, if we aim this boundary and the Amazon forest will not be reconstructed by itself, is that we're gonna have a big desert form here in the Brazilian lowlands. And this is hard for you to talk mainly in a political way, because you know climate change do not occur from one year to another. It took decades to happen. And for politicians, they just say, okay, it will not happen when I'm here, so I don't care. It's something like this. Unfortunately, it's something like this. But we are reaching a break point that I hope we do not reach, because if we get in this point, there is no coming back, you know. Then we're gonna start to lose a lot of water. If you check in Brazil in the last years, we don't have the amount of water that we used to have. It is already a reflex of this devastation, not only in the Amazon, but here in what we call the Pantanal too. I hope we don't reach this point. About the geography, it's linked. It's all linked together. You know, the climate changing, you're gonna change the vegetation, and unfortunately, we hope it won't happen. In the last 2 decades, we have the best satellite search for this kind of devastation, the best of the world. It was amazing. It starts in 2005, because in 2004, it was the year with the most destruction of the Amazon forest until last year, unfortunately, until last year. And in 2005, it starts, and you know, the degradation of the forest just go down because they start to focus everything, and the forest starts to grow again. It was very, very beautiful, very, very nice. Of course, I want to be clear in one thing. You destroy the forest today, it will be able to grow itself. But you already killed the fauna. You already kill a lot of plants, and this is no comeback. You know, it's gonna grow again, but it will not be the same. And I hope we do not get this unreachable point, this break point, because, well, this will be a problem, probably a more critical problem in like 30 years. But in the next decade, we're gonna suffer with mainly the scarcity of water. Okay, I hope.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Tiago. I'm going to make a question from Isabela Nascimento. She's a student at UFMG, and she lives in Montes Claros, north of Minas Gerais. And she's saying in the past few years, we had some seismic tremors, which is not common in Brazil. that in Montes Claros.
Yeah.
Do you know if there has been some research about the origins, the origin of these tremors? I remember people said that there were a tectonic plate crack.
Yeah, this is, well, first of all, she can be, don't worry about it. It's not the tectonic plate crack. The tectonic plate, mainly in Montes Claros, I think it's around here. Well, it's very rigid and very thick. You know, it's one of the thickest points of the South America plate. And it's stable in one hand, but this seismic activity, what we have here around Montes Claros, we have a big unconformity. We call this a shear zone, and it makes a lot of planar structures in the rocks. It was formed in the first event that I talked about during this agglutination, and all the rocks, they get features like this, you know, these planar things. And when you have a lot of these unconformities, a lot of these discontinuities, they sometimes slide for accommodation. And when you have, you know, you don't have to get a mountain to slide. If you have a small amount of rocks just sliding, just accommodating, it releases a lot of energy. It's a lot of stress. And that's the thing that caused most of the earthquakes in Brazil. There is a researcher from Federal University from Ouro Preto. He is pretty close here. He already did a talk just about these earthquakes in Montes Claros. And there is in USP, the university from São Paulo, and the Federal University from Brasilia. There are two seismic programs. They are together with the Geological Survey from Brazil, and they just send a report explaining this step by step. So it's pretty good. They got the seismic data from all of Brazil, and they go, okay, here is this kind of rock that is sliding, accommodating, and doing this kind of earthquake. The only place in Brazil, actually, there are two places that they don't know for sure. Here in the Northeast, there are some places that the accommodation is very hard. And so mainly in Maceió, if I'm sure, there are some breaks. And on the other side, when you go here, this is what we call Acre. This state, this province here is Acre. And here we got some seismic activity due to the Andes formation. You know, because here in the Andes, we have the boundary of the plate tectonic, the South America plate, and here is what we call the Nazca plate. And there are a lot of seismic activity here, and it goes to Rio Branco here too. It's like a far field stress, you know, the propagation of the stress. But here in Montes Claros it's not that big deal, but it happens. Unfortunately, it happens. The thing, Montes Claros get more famous because the rocks there, they have this structure more printed in the rocks, so you have a little bit more of this slide and accommodation. But this kind of thing we also have in Mariana, including they said that the rupture, the tailing dam rupture could be related to these earthquakes of this sliding. It's not 100% sure, but they thought it could be related.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your answer. I'll just gonna mention Stephanie Paliza from Universidade San Ignacio de Loyola in Peru. She also asked about the effect of climate change in Brazil because of the Amazon. I think Professor has already answered that question, right, in a very clear way. And so I'm going to pass on to Adele Simoni, Centro Studio Comunicado Imprensa de Italia. And she's asking about the formation of lençóis maranhenses.
Okay. Let me put this on Google Earth. I didn't talk about the Lençóis Maranhenses. It's a wonderful place in Brazil. As I don't have too many times, so I don't talk. When you see here in Google Earth, you already can see this light spot here. I'm gonna just put a little bit more. These are the Lençóis Maranhenses. Wonderful place here. Wonderful, wonderful. So you can see all this sand, and during the dry season, it's like a desert, but during the wet season, you have a lot of small lakes forming here. And so to understand how it forms during what I talk about the second event, the Atlantic opening. And when you go, I will just zoom out for you to understand. You can see these lines in the Atlantic Ocean. These lines, this is the accommodation of the lithosphere. You know, this accommodation of Earth. And it can have a lot of movements. And in this place, we have a hard slide, a very hard slide place here, and it reflects in Brazilian coast. That's why Brazilian coast, you go up, 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 then you break down here. And when you go, these lines, they fit directly here in the Lençóis Maranhenses. And when you go there, what we have here is a lowland. And so the ocean, the sand from the beach, they are not restricted for only these places like here. It can go countryside because you have a larger lowland, so the sand just go up. You know, it's like a sand invasion in the continent because you have a lowland here. And well, the scenario is just amazing. You can search, like Google it, Lençóis Maranhenses. I never went there. Very, very nice place. And it formed like, you know, 400 million years ago, mainly 400 million ago. And it's exactly because when you open a continent, this is not a homogeneous process, because you already have a lot of structures printed in the rocks here in the Brazil, like in Brazil. So when you start to break it, it breaks the pieces in different ways according to the ancient structures of the rock. So what we have here, the basement, the rocks that are in the bottom of the sand, they have these biggest structures that go countryside here. And so there is a little block that goes just a little bit down during this opening. And so the sand can do this continental invasion. It's a very nice place. You know, it's like when you got a kilometer scale beach, you know, a very large beach. Is very, very, very nice place here in Brazil. And well, it's close, pretty close. You know, Brazil is our continental country to the Amazon River here. So very nice. I don't know if you get it, but there are a lot of tectonic input here, but mainly you can get the ancient structure of the rocks. And when you cross it with the Atlantic opening, you make a lowland here where you have a lot of sand deposits.
Excellent, Professor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from Isabela Matos. She's also a student at UFMG. And her question is regarding the Brazilian groundwater. Is there any study that shows how much it is being affected? And have they suffered any decrease or deterioration in recent times?
Yeah, this is a little hard to talk because the water cycle, it's hard to measure in a short time scale. You know, what you have here I'm gonna put this north. Okay, what we have here, this is the biggest, actually this is here mainly in Brazil, in the Amazon River, what we call aquíferos. This is the groundwater. This is the biggest of the world. You have the Alta do Chão aquífero system. It's very famous and it provides lots and lots of water. When you go down here in Brazil, here, I'm gonna put the whole Brazil. When you go here, you have this Alta do Chão. And here is what supplies water for most of Brazilian population, because most of the population is around here. So, you know, you can measure it in like the recent time, because these changes, they last for decades, you know. So if we start to take care of the environment now, things gonna change in like 10 years. So we have, if you check by the 80s to now, we have less water. Yes, we have less water, but it's hard to make a clear connection, because you can do a direct link to the amount of water in the 80s and the amount of water nowadays, because we have the double of the population. We have a lot of consumption, sorry. And well, it's hard to tell, because well, the best measurements came from the 90s to now. You know, the last 30 years we have good measurements. From the 2000s to now, excellent measurements, and we can see it's getting drier. We can see this, so we have to do something to stop, because will be one day, I don't know, in 40 years, that we will not have more water here for the southeast. You know, sometimes here, mainly in Sao Paulo, there are a lot of people during the dry season, they just cut the water in a time of the day. Sometimes they just cut the energy in a time of the day because, well, don't have it. It's hard. As I said, you can measure in a scale of, you know, in the last 2, 4, or 5 years. You have to put some decades in account. And when you put these decades, the population changes a lot. The amount of cities changes a lot. We know that it's getting dry, but it's hard to make this direct link, you know, because when you go to do when you're going to talk something like this, you need a lot of data. You need a lot of data, because many people just going to say, oh, this is not my fault. You know, the population is the double of the size now. They are drinking a lot of water. They are taking too many showers. And scientifically, we know that we are doing a bad stuff. We are not actually acting okay to the environment, and it is getting drier and drier and drier. They just found out here much larger aquíferos a little bit down from Alta do Chão, and now it's a larger system, it goes not only in this green area here, this dark green area, and it goes a little bit more to the south, is the largest amount of water that we can drink, not in the oceans, but it's the large amount of water of the world. But most of it is in the north. And actually, this question, it's hard to make the link, to make the direct link, do all those modifications that happen in society in general.
Oh, thank you. Unfortunately, right? But thank you for your answer. Now we have a question from Hajpal from University, Hajpal Chima. I don't know how to say that name. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. From University of Sheffield. And the question says, I have come across the term tropical cyclones. What are they? Are they the same as hurricanes, and do they occur in Brazil?
I'm sorry, Luciana, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it.
Sorry. He says he came across the term tropical cyclones, and then he's wondering, what are they, if they are similar to hurricanes, and if they occur in Brazil.
Yeah, it occurs in Brazil. And, you know, it's mainly, it occurs in a small one in Brazil. You know, these tropical cyclones, it's not a hurricane. And in this last December, we get a little more of this. It gets big storms, mainly in Santa Catarina, in the south, and a little bit in São Paulo, here around this place in Brazil. They are not hurricanes, but they have like they form at the same way. Their genesis are very similar, but here in Brazil, there is a big thing and a nice thing for Brazil, because, you know, hurricanes to form, you have to take into account all the weather conditions around the globe. And here in Brazil, we have some cold chains come here from Antarctica, and most of the weather comes from the Atlantic Ocean. And, you know, it doesn't start to spin. This is a very important thing, because here, like here in the South US, you have where two kinds of climate change, you know, one come from the north and one come from the south, they met. And when they met, this is what caused the big hurricanes. And you know what happens to the US many, many times. It's mainly because of this. When you go to the Bermuda Triangle, what happens in the Bermuda Triangle? So you have so many ships and all this mystic involved in it, is because you have two kinds of currents going there. And so you have a lot of hurricanes, you have a lot of fog, and this is what happens in this area. When you go to Brazil, about the nature, we have nothing to complain, because it doesn't form tropical hurricanes, not large ones. We have a kind of one here in Santa Catarina in January, but it's not very hard. It wasn't very hard. And one in São Paulo, but again, just in the ocean, and it wasn't very hard either. So pretty calm place here in Brazil. We are blessed with a calm nature.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a question from Chi Yong Lee. She's from CU National University. And she's asking, I heard that COVID-19 might have a positive impact on the environment due to the decrease of use of vehicles, traveling, and etc. Can this be possible? Can this be possibly true, or is this a mere assumption?
Yeah, here in Brazil, it's interesting because here there is a place in São Paulo. São Paulo is the biggest city of Brazil. Well, this is the urban network, but I'm gonna put this. And it's actually it seems to be true, this impact of COVID-19 in the environment, because São Paulo, it was like the rainy city in the 80s. Everything they called it Cidade da Garoa, is like the city that rains a little bit every day. Nowadays, it doesn't rain anymore because it gets so big and there is a lot of pollution, and it changed the climate there. So it's not the small rains every day anymore. You have only big storms because the weather gets so hot in São Paulo that you can just make these small rains. It just get a huge amount and then go big storms. And this changes a little bit. You could see this. You have to see the change. You have to go to the extreme places. And São Paulo in Brazil is the most extremely place where you can find this kind of thing. And there is a researcher. There is an institute here. It calls Serra Pilheira. And there is a researcher from Serra Pilheira that did a work very nice here in São Paulo. And he saw the change in the atmosphere during the lockdowns. Of course, it was a small change, but it happens. It was good for the environment, but it lasts like 2 months. And nowadays, it's just back to normal. Because what he did, he get a lot of pictures and satellite images from the last 3 decades, and he goes searching for changes in the landscape and how it directly affects the weather. And when COVID-19 spread and everyone were locked down, he can see the changing going backwards, like back 10 years in 2 months. When you stop this hard pollution with vehicles going everywhere, he starts to see even the small rains in the border of São Paulo. Of course, in the center is still very hot, but in the border, it starts to develop, to go back to a good environment. In the rest of Brazil, they tried to make it, but they didn't check any change. I saw something like in Italy, I think the Venice channels were very clean. I don't know how long it's gonna go, but here in Brazil, we have this example in São Paulo. It was very nice because you can see, we know what we are doing wrong, but we're still doing this sometimes because we have no other option. But it was very nice. The COVID-19 actually helps the environment in one hand, but in the other hand, as everyone was so worried about the COVID-19 here in Brazil, the destruction of the Amazon forest happened as faster than ever. So, no one was checking, it just be destroyed. So it helps in one hand, it destroys faster in the other hand, unfortunately. But yes, it happens. It wasn't just a myth. It really could be measured by scientific calculation. It was a very nice study.
Very, very interesting. Now, maybe it's kind of linked to that question, and it's a big issue here. From Lara Croix from Queen Mary University of London. Considering the strong link between the main sources of economic activity in Brazil, such as soy and meat exportation, and the devastation of the environment, my question is, in your opinion, what is the best state policy to develop an environmentally friendly economic growth in Brazil? And I would like to expand that a little bit, and that's my personal interest, having to do with having Brazil this economy based on extraction, on mining, and just like packing up mining and then exporting, and then linked also to the links between the agricultural business and the indigenous people. That's a weird compound, I thought, that was proposed by the government as a policy. What would be your thoughts on that?
Okay, Luciana, can you just repeat the final part of the question? I understand your part, but I didn't get the final part of the question.
Yeah, the final part is because now as a government policy, they have this idea of getting together the agribusiness and the indigenous people to work together, and how would that also impact or influence on these environmental policies?
Yeah. Okay. The environmental issue here in Brazil nowadays, it's catastrophic actually. We can't making clear this is my opinion put on this subject. In the last years, mainly in the last 5 years here in Brazil, we are destroying the environment more than ever. And you have two things. Brazil, until today, we are a third world country. Unfortunately, we have to make it clear. We have some places very high developed. We have some amazing places in the Northeast, in the Southeast, all around Brazil. We have these nice places to be. In São Paulo, where we have the highest GDP, of course, we have sometimes a better life quality. But we still act as we are, I'm saying this in my opinion, just to be very clear, we still act as we are a colony, because soybeans, we have soybeans here the size of Germany, an area in the size of Germany, and we export most of the soybeans is to feed the cattle or to export to China. And you see, China is pretty huge. Why don't they plant their own soybeans? Because the soybeans destroy the soil. It's only one culture, and it takes a lot of water. So what during colonial times was the gold, now is the water. Brazilian water is used for soybeans, and it's like for 5 to 10 families that explore this, and it goes to China, and this is destroying most of Brazilian forests, most not, but like a big part of Brazilian forests, and just drilling the water. So if you have to make a link, in the 17th century was the gold, now it's the water. If you get this part, the actual government politics with the indigenous people, it's wrong in so many ways that I can't even start to talk, because it's destroying for cattle. If you have to open a mine and it is in indigenous terrain, they just don't care. It's things that we can believe. And during the pandemic, it was things, you know, it was, in my opinion, it was crime against humanity, because there are things here, there are some indigenous places here in Brazil that the government, the federal government, try to do a decree that they should not be informed in their language about the COVID-19. So, you know, this is what called in many words, in many places of the world, is Brazilian government acting like a genocide of indigenous people during the pandemic. Because this kind of action, you go to the people and you just give them the ignorance, so you can do the information for the people in the language. Thank God people from the healthcare system went there and talked to the people, talked to the indigenous people in their language. But there are a lot of misinformation and a lot of negationism here in Brazil, and it's get very hard. I actually don't know what is worst for indigenous people here, if it is the COVID-19. When you get a lot of Brazilian people die, it's more than 500,000 people. And if you check, you know how many indigenous people die, how many black people die, and how many white people die. You see most of the deaths are between black people. And if you get, you know, the percentage, you know, if you go like some percent of indigenous people die, this for white, this for black, most of people are indigenous. You know, the percent of indigenous people that died during the COVID-19, it's a catastrophe. And then you go to you put this together with the devastation of the forest. They are not respecting anymore, because there are some areas here. We have the IBAMA. This is like the Environmental Institute from Brazil. It took very good care for indigenous areas, and well, the IBAMA is being destroyed nowadays. You know, they are not getting the money to do the fiscalization anymore, mainly in the last 3 years. And you see a lot of indigenous people, just their place in getting burned, destroyed. And well, I think nowadays, from the recent time, you know, from the last 30 years, it's the worst time for the Amazon forest and the indigenous people. Yeah, from the last 30 years, I have no doubt this is the worst time to be an indigenous people in Brazil. And I'm sorry, Luciana, I didn't get exactly the first question correctly.
No, but it was very clear. It was about the policies for. Let me just go back. I was in another page. Sorry. It was exactly that about how is the government treating the recovery, right, of the Amazon, and the best state policy to develop an environmentally friendly economic growth in Brazil. What would be the idea? The idea would be fiscalization, as you would say, and then we haven't been having that for over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Right?
I want to highlight one more thing, is that we have in Brazil this fiscalization system from satellite images. It was a reference in the world. And I don't know if you saw in the last month, the computer that did most of this data is being shutting down. For
I don't
the
believe
first time, yeah, it called Tupan. Tupan is like an indigenous god, and it was very symbolic, the name of the computer. And it's been shutting down for the first time in more than 20 years. And they say they are shutting down because they are building a better one. But if they shut down now, the idea is to shut down the next month. It's the month with the more destruction. And I
And
hope that,
also, they were questioning the data, right? They said it was imprecise. Weren't they saying
yeah,
that? Ah, no, we don't believe this. This is not true. And they questioning themselves.
yeah, this kind of thing, this kind of negationism here in Brazil, it's a problem nowadays for everything. People think that science is a matter of opinion. Science is not a matter of opinion. You have the data, you can interpret the data in many ways, but it's not opinion. The devastation is there. And it goes for everything, for global changing, the climate changing, global warming, the COVID-19, the devastation of the forests. You have this combo actually. And unfortunately, Brazil is, sorry, it's hard.
I know it's hard times, right, Professor? So unfortunately we are running out of time, but we have one final question. That's a very nice question, by the way, right, Marcos? And I think it's nice for I think it would be nice for closing that talks about the disasters.
Yes, that's right, Luciana. We have a question from Rodrigo Franco. He's a student at UFMG. And he's saying, from the point of view of geography, what has been done during the last years to foster environmental recovery in the areas affected by dam ruptures in Minas Gerais?
Okay, so we have these two ruptures in Minas Gerais, and one of the ruptures, actually they both are pretty close to Belo Horizonte. Here, let me see. Okay, this is Belo Horizonte. Here is the Serra do Kuhal, and here we go down. One of the ruptures was around here, and the other one was around here. They are pretty close to Belo Horizonte, but the rivers go other way, and nothing actually affects the big town, because if it did affect Belo Horizonte, everything will go faster because everyone lives here. But what is going on? Nowadays, we have here in UFMG, including the Geoscience Institute, we have a lot of studies to check the first step now. We have to check the actual degradation. We have to be clear. Okay, we have this kind of quality of water in the river here. Now we have this, now we have this, now we have this. It has to be very, very clear. And we are mapping this. We are making this extremely clear. This is the Doce River going there. This is the most affected river. The second dam rupture, it wasn't that big damage for the environment because there is another dam a little bit to the south that just contain most of the mud. So the second one was most a crime against humanity because a lot of people died in this, more than 200 people. But the first one was the biggest crime against environment ever seen in South America. What we are seeing here is getting the exact data. Of course, there are some places, there are many regional initiatives to get things done, to get things recovered. But one thing that it's gonna take decades to get back is because the tail, all the things that are here before the rupture, they are like mud. it's a fine grain. And when it goes to the river, it starts to go and to fulfill every crack, and it kills all the plants in the bottom of the river. And as you kill the plants, if you have like any kind of fish that could survive, it will not have many things to eat because you kill the plants. This very, very fine grain mud, it just go down in the river, killing everything. And the other impact, as it fulfill the cracks, this we are already seeing some impacts. As it fulfill the cracks, the water do not spread in the underground. So as the water do not spread in the underground, the aquifer systems that goes in this region, it start to dry faster. It start to dry early in the year and much faster because you don't have the connections anymore. There are a big thing now that Vale this year, it was the agreement. I think it's more than 1 billion to reconstruct the environment. It was for Minas Gerais, and I think now it's gonna start to do everything to rebuild the place. You know, if you think this agreement, it took so long, it's been 7 years from the first rupture, and now we are getting the money to do this stuff. Because until today, what we are doing is like measuring the water quality, measuring not only the water quality, but what kind of chemical is in the soil around the rivers and everything. We have these very good measurements. We're still doing these measurements because it's not okay. The river did not recover. I don't know if it got them recover one day, but the measurements, I think they're going to start this year from the last 4 to 5 years, because only now we have the money to do this 7 years after.
Well, Professor, I mean, such hard times, right? We're
Yeah.
facing, and politically, environmentally, economically. But it's always nice to hear your words and your thoughts on the topic, right?
Thank you very
To give
much.
us some hope with such an enlightening talk. And the questions were so good, also, right? So you were able.
Yeah.
Well, we get so impressed, Professor, about your ability to show us the pictures so that we can actually, picture the places and what you're explaining. I would like to thank you especially for that, these great insights you give us in your prompting on showing us how things work. And in the name of the Office of International Affairs and Refugee Summer School and Brazilian Studies, and also our director, our Deputy Dean on International Affairs, Professor Davson Lopes, and also our coordinator, Professor Lucas Lima, would like to thank you. They have been following us on YouTube, and there are many things. Students have really enjoyed it, and of course, we would like to count on you on our next summer schools to come, and hopefully together, right? Physically
Yeah.
together.
Please,
And
hopefully together.
yeah, if you have some final words.
Well, thank you very, very much. I love being a part of the summer school. It's a very, very nice event. It's a pleasure. I like very much to do this kind of event. And I hope next year we'll be together, because you remember 2 years ago, we went in a small field trip. It was
Oh,
very,
that was
very
great,
nice.
wasn't it? Yes, it was
Yeah.
great. And hopefully we'll be able to do that over and over again over
Yeah, I
the
hope
following
so.
years. Right?
It was
Okay. Thank
very,
you very
very
much.
nice.
Guys, and then I would like to ask you, Professor, to stop sharing your screen. And then we have
Okay.
a great view of the class. And I'm going to ask everyone to open their microphone or their video cameras. so that we can take a group picture. That was excellent. Thank you very much, guys. And I'll see, and Marcos, about the Belia, please.
Yes, as usual, we have Portuguese classes at 11:30. So we'll see you soon, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you all very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.